What is up, everybody? It is good to get back in the studio today. We're going to take a look at the brand new plugin from WAVES, the SSL 4000 EV2 channel. And it's basically a revamp of their SSL 4000 E-Console channel strip. And it includes some brand new features, including the ability to switch between this sort of brown EQ and black EQ. There's tons of videos on YouTube about sort of the differences of those EQ and sort of what they look like. So be sure to check those out. I've elected to use the brown on one of my channels, but not really on any of the other ones. And then my favorite new feature is just like the CLA Mix Hub, the ability to have this line amp and line trim built into the channel strip, which is, it's basically, you know, it's including the real missing piece sort of between the old plugin and the real channel strip in the real world console, right? So other than that, all of the pieces of the channel strip are pretty much exactly the same as the old version. It's just modeled after the after the channel strip using, you know, the newest technology or latest and greatest technology. If you kind of read through the manual, it's just, you know, it's got modeling functionality built into here that just wasn't possible when they modeled the plugin initially. I'm not sure what that means, you know what I mean, in terms of, you know, what is different about this modeling versus the old modeling. And there's also a ton of videos out there right now that will sort of A and B the new one versus the old one and stuff like that. I'm not going to really do that in this video. I'm just going to show you how I like to use the SSL 4000 console channel strip. This is the 4000E, right? So not the G or not the J or any of those. This is the 4000E console channel strip. And this means that you can switch between the black and the brown EQ type here on the low end, which I typically use for like a sweetener, like a boost, a low end boost on pretty much everything I use it on. So that's from the kick drum to the bass guitar to the guitars, vocals, whatever. I use that to add some body or some beef, you know, some low end into those particular instruments. So let's just dive in. I'm just going to show you how I'm using this. And basically, this is, you know, sort of a crash course into how I learned how to mix, essentially, because I learned how to mix on these kinds of SSL plugins. And so I'm going to solo the drums, and let's just have a look at what these sound like without any plugins. So let me go ahead and show all of the tracks. So I've got a couple of kick tracks, a couple of snare tracks, the toms, the hi-hats, a couple of overheads, and a couple of rooms. Actually, I have 3 different room flavors. And then a duplication of the far room, which is kind of a crush room. It's an effect room, which I've got automated here in certain parts. So I'm going to just turn off all of the plugins, and we can see what this sounds like just off the shelf. Now I've got this into a Lindell, you know, just for transparency's sake, into an 80 series kind of a bus, which isn't doing much. Just adding a little sweetener and a little trim. Kind of rounding off some of those unpleasant frequencies a little bit. But again, not doing much. So that's why I'm keeping it on, just for transparency's sake. Now watch what happens when I turn on all these. Immediately. Incredible sounding. That's before. Here's after. Oh, just frickin'. And let me tell you where I start. I don't actually start with all of the different channels. I start with this. So I actually just start with an SSL channel strip on the drum bus, and then I go to town on that. I do a little sweetening on the low end. So this is the kick drum range, right around 60, 50. I do a little tucking, sort of, you know, in the in this case, in the snare range. You know what I mean? A little tuck in the snare range, and then a little sweetening here, a little high-end boost. And then I do a little, and this is going to be pretty synonymous, you'll notice, with pretty much all the channels. I'm taking advantage of this new feature that I freaking love, which is on the CLA mix-up sort of version of the SSL channel, but it's the mic input. You know, I'm driving some distortion into that, right? So I'm seeing some blinking lights in here. Oh no! You know, it sounds incredible, and I'm not worried about blinking lights in here if it sounds good, and especially if I'm not really clipping in the DAW. I don't give a rat's ass. I don't give a damn. So sounds great. As before. Just a little bit. It's not really doing much. Now, before I do that, I'm going into an API 2500 compression. And you're going to see what this does. I had set this up after I had kind of gone through and done some of the other sweetening. So I'm just going to turn on the SSL console on some of these other channels, and you'll see what I'm doing. And then I kind of added this in later, so I'll get to that step. So I've got that on the drum bus. Here's before. Here's after. Just a little sweetening. Now let's go into the kick drum and the snare. So here's the kick on the left, the snare on the right. Oh. So in every case, I'm using the dynamics to channel out feature, which if you want to mix, you know, through the filters first, then into the EQ, then into the compressor, into the output, you want to hit this split option here, and you want to hit this dynamics to channel out, because this switches the default routing, which is going to be compression first and then EQ, kind of in the order that you see it here in the interface. If you want to switch those, then you want to go dynamics to channel out, hit that switch right there. If you want to get the analog coloration, make sure that this is turned on too, this analog button. So this is kick drum before. Here's kick drum after. Doing a lot of boost on the low end, around 55. Doing a cut before that, just to keep from too much buildup. Doing some compression after the fact. Doing a little bit of mic input, and a little trim. I mean, not much to compensate. I'm just basically driving it into the red on purpose. Here's before. Here's after. I'm going to turn on the snare. Here's before, snare. Here's after. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of okay, here's snare before. Here's snare after. I mean, I'm giving a lot of boost into the body here. I'm also keeping this sort of resonance frequency from building up too much, tucking that back a little bit. Took a minute to sort of find that was at around, you know, 450 in terms of Ks, you know, so 0.45 Ks, so 450 hertz. Tucking that back a little bit. And then just adding a little sweetener on top, around 8K. Little mic input. I mean, like I said, on every channel, I'm using that mic input. I'm also doing a little compression here. I haven't added any other compression into these channels other than just the onboard SSL compression. Sounds frickin' great. So again, here's kick and snare before. I mean, already sound pretty great. But then, here's kick and snare after. Both of them are boosting just the sweetest parts of those sounds and tucking back just a little bit of the unsweetest parts of those sounds. That's all it's doing. It's really all I'm doing, just adding a little bit of compression. You'll notice they're set about the same, you know. It's all going according to the plan. And then I'm basically applying, I mean, it's not science. I'm basically applying pretty much the same. Let's pull these up beside each other so I'm not, you can see I'm not lying. Basically the same exact, other than a lot more mic input, I'm basically applying the same amount of sort of EQ and compression-ish, you know, to the snare top and snare bottom. And the snare bottom is just a sweetener sound anyway. It doesn't have very much volume, you know what I mean, in terms of its record volume. So, and then I don't even have any EQ on the toms yet. The latest thing I've got EQ on is also the sub. And now you can really feel that. You can feel that sub come in as soon as I turn it on that channel. Here's a sub before. Sub after. Yeah. It just makes it sound much more modern. And I'm just doing the same thing. Here's, you know, these two kick sub and kick sum channels pulled up next to each other. So I've got the SSL loaded onto all those, and then I loaded it onto the hat as well to do a lot of filtering on the hats, a little bit of mic driving, a little tucking back on the output side, and a lot of sweetening of like the high-end frequency, just turning it up on the red. So this doesn't have hi-hats in it right now. Let's get to a part that does. There's some hi-hats before, hi-hats after. Hi-hats before, hi-hats after. Oh yeah, much sweeter. A little crisper. And then I got this devil lock. Just doing a dirt crush thing. And then around this time I loaded a API 2500 to do a little bit of compression before it goes into the channel. I'm trying to think of how I would use the hardware. I don't know if I'd use it that way or not, if I would do it before or after. You know, you guys tell me what you think. What's the best? I'm open to ideas. And then I got a parallel channel going, which on the parallel channel, I wanted it. You can hear how it sounds just by itself. It sounds gnarly. I mean, it sounds, you know, pretty awful, if I'm going to be honest. But I wanted it to, it's meant to be 100% vibe. In other words, I need all the transients to be on the drums. You know what I mean? All the transients there to be on the drums. And so I wanted this to be all vibe and no transients. So look at how I've got, I mean, it still has some transients, of course, but I've got a transient shaper coming in here and bringing down some of the attack and lengthening some of the sustain. So just, it's all vibe. I'm trying to give as much tail and as little pokiness, as little transients as possible, because the drum aux, here's all my transients right here. Here's the loudest parts of the mix. You can see when you come down here to the master fader, when that kick and that snare sound, that's the tippity top of the mix. So I don't need any more transients on the vibe channel. I just need it to be vibe. That's all I need. So I've got a compression, I've got a bluey compression pulling out tons of transient. I've got another transient designer, again, pulling out tons of transient, and then a little EQ to kind of, you know, remove some of the rumble and sweeten some of the cool parts of the kick and the snare, and also doing a lot of removing of this, you know, 0.45, again, you know, 0.45K, 450 hertz snare, you know, this resonant frequency on the snare, and then doing a little shelving, a little frequency, just shelf high end on that, and then again going into the SSL, you know, so just a little bit of sweetening, a lot of tucking back of this 45K. You can see I'm going full ham on that. I just need this to be like a little vibe character that I bring in on some parts. So I've got it set to like a 16. You can hear how dry it sounds without it. And then I add it in. It's just the vibe channel. That's all it is. It's the drum vibe. So, you know, that's what I wanted. And then I'll go ahead and add in the bass. And the guitars. So let's start it over. And on the guitars and the bass, I just have them both going into an Eve. So I just like the sound of that stuff. It's, you know, I didn't record into it, but when I get into mixing it here and trying to make it sound as good as I want, I start liking the way it sounds coming through an Eve preamp. I just like that sound, you know, so especially for this track, that's kind of how I'm going with it. And then on the bass, I've got it on, let's see, another Bluey. And then, I mean, and I didn't really talk about it, but on the Neves, just doing a little kind of sweetening, little tucking on the bass guitars of the high-end frequencies, a lot of sweetening of that low 100 frequency. Little add of frequency here on the guitars, but mainly just these drives are cranked, and then I'm tucking back the outputs to make sure that they're not going crazy in terms of volume. And this is a duo. I can actually crank that a little bit, give a little more perceived volume, a little balance. That's nice. And then on the bass and guitars, just going again into the new EV2 SSL 4000. If you want to pay attention to the frequencies that I boost, this is where I add sweetener. This is where I add the frequencies that represent each instrument the best. And so on the bass guitars, that's going to be right around 100 for me on the bass. See what it sounds like when I take it away. It sounds terrible when I add it back in. You can easily go way too hot, but just giving a little sweetener normally for me in between 3 to 6 sounds fantastic. And then on the guitars, I'm actually doing around the same thing. I haven't fully really dug into sort of the best frequencies to mix on the acoustic guitars. So you'll notice I'm kind of matching a lot of the EQ choices from bass guitars to acoustic guitars. So you guys tell me. Drop a comment down below if you guys know some of the sweetener frequencies on acoustic guitars. At least the way I have these recorded is super close to the ear. You know, I've got the microphone about a foot away from the acoustic guitar, pointed at about the 12th fret. So it's capturing it really, really cleanly, really close. Not much room. And then after that, I'll just you can see that I turned off all of these. So now they're all back on. Same thing on the vocals, just, you know, doing a little sweetening of the kind of lower body and the top end, a little bit of mic input, and some filters. So just kind of shaping around those body and sweetening frequencies, you know, doing a little cutting of those to make sure it's not overloading those really top end or, you know, low boomy frequencies. And that's it. I'm using the SSL channel strip, I mean, across the board, you know, on the main groups of the guitars and bass guitars, so on the subgroups, and on the subgroup for the drums and the main drum instruments, so kick and snare and hats so far. And then I've got some effects that are yeah, just like kind of CLA style bucket effects, 4 different delay choices, 4 different reverb choices, and that's what I've got going so far. And I mean, how do I like this channel strip? It sounds freaking fantastic. You know, it's it gets the job done. I was able to, within this past week, you know, from working on this song last weekend to this weekend, I was able to come in here for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, a few nights a week, and really get a fantastic drum sound that was inspiring. Get, you know, a fantastic vocal sound that these are just, so far, these are scratch vocals. You know, I'm not gonna keep these. I may keep some of them. We'll see. But so far, I've, you know, given that I was able to get to a sort of happy place with the drum sound, I was then able to sort of mentally move on to the acoustic guitars and the bass guitars. So that's what I worked on today. These are the, you know, the best sounding sort of acoustic guitar takes, around 4 and 5 on that. And with the bass, yeah, it was up to like take 7. Yeah, with those, I did like 5 or so takes today, pulled the best of the best together. So it's sounding freaking amazing so far. Really stoked about how it's sounding, and really like this new plugin from Waves. You know what I mean? It's really awesome to see this new feature with the mic input. I'm going to use it all the time, and just with the simple fact that it works, it gets the job done, and I've been recording into it all day with absolutely no problem. So I've had these running on all the tracks all freaking day, you know, and I'm sitting here at in Pro Tools. I'm on the M1 Mac Mini. You know, I'm sitting in here at 128 samples, buffer size, you know, using a little bit, so full transparency, using a little bit of caching of the disc playback. It just tends to help my machine run a little bit better when I want to use plugins and stuff like that. So I found, and it's working freaking amazingly. And that's all I can ask for. You know, it's responsive. The meters are responsive. I can see what it's doing. I can hear what it's doing. And I'm super, super happy with it. So if you haven't checked it out yet, if you're an owner of the SSL bundle and you're on a current, you know, subscription with the Wave Central updates, then you just get this for free. If you're a previous owner of those plugins, you might get a discount. So check out the link in the description to visit waves.com and check out this SSL solid state Logic 4000E console channel strip EV2. I can only imagine that this is probably going to be a common theme, that we'll probably see some updated, you know, G consoles, you know, CLA 1176 and LA2As and like those Neve channels, and like I bet we'll start to see some updated versions of those here in the coming years. So stay tuned. We shall see. At any rate, it's been awesome, and I hope you all have an amazing Sunday. Until next time.